Hey guys, I'm here to do hopefully another rapid wrap up, but we shall see. I have a few extra bits to talk about today, so let's just get started. Of course, it is for the movies that I watched during the first quarter of 2021, so January, February and March. Let's kick it off with January. So the first thing I watched was Donnie Darko, which I gave a 3 stars. So the concept of this movie is a troubled high school kid has an imaginary friend telling him that the world is going to end imminently. There were so many familiar faces in this. We had Drew Barrymore, the actor that plays Mysterio was our main character, Rocket from Sucker Punch, Ashley Tisdale, the actor of Spencer from iCarly, to name but a few. Anyway, this is one I've been wanting to watch for ages, yet I don't really know how I feel about it after the fact. It didn't go any way that I expected it would go, although I don't really know what I expected of it, which makes no sense whatsoever. But it was all very weird, and the explanation of sorts that we did kind of get near the end, I still didn't really get. I get it, but not on the level where I'm satisfied that that's the reasoning behind things. However, I think I did like it, so it is kind of like a middle and range of a 3 star for me. Then I watched the movie for Snowpiercer and I gave this a 3.5 stars. I've been wanting to watch this one since enjoying season 1 of the TV show. At this point of filming, I've not checked out season 2 yet, but it's recently aired. I believe in terms of timeline, this is set a little bit after the events of the TV show, which was more of like the origin story. However, the movie was the original concept and then the TV show followed afterwards. It's definitely more frantic than the TV show, especially with the acting of Tilda Swinton and the school teacher. They were just very hysterical in terms of their delivery, almost to the point of like this obsessive belief in the engine. But I did enjoy it. I did like the TV show better than the movie though, and some things don't match up. So I feel like when they first released the movie, they probably didn't necessarily have a TV show in mind when creating the movie, because some things that, you know, when you're just looking for things to see if it all connects, some things just don't connect a little bit, but not like overly so. Nevertheless, I still thought it was entertaining and interesting. Then I watched Colour Out of Space. This was whilst we still had our free trial of Amazon Prime, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't see this in the cinema or pay any money for it. Yeah, it was a strange one. I gave it 2 stars. So after a meteorite lands in the front yard of their farm, Nathan Gardner and his family find themselves battling a mutant extraterrestrial organism that infects their minds and bodies, transforming their quiet rural life into a technicolor nightmare. This was just such a strange film. Straight off the bat, it was weird. Simultaneously felt like too much was happening whilst nothing happened. It was very random and smushed together, and the pacing was just really weird and off. It was over the top and pretty trippy, but the colours were stunning. It was very beautiful. In fact, it almost feels like they spent too much money on the imagery and the effects of the movie production and didn't really follow up with a very compelling or interesting storyline. No wonder it lost so much money at the box office. Awkward. Then I watched The Martian, which gave it 4 stars. I hadn't previously had any interest in the movie or the book that it was adapted from. So Mark is left stranded on Mars, and he basically has to survive until a rescue team can come out to get him. So I feel like despite the devastation of being stranded on Mars, presumed dead, and the constant disaster that is set to test Mark's resilience, it's more of a hopeful and beautiful storyline than I was expecting, and I'm quite appreciative of that. It was surprisingly funny too, like when you think of pretty much following one guy on what they deemed to be an uninhabitable planet on his own, you think, how can it be funny? But there were some humorous scenes. Actually, there was a really funny joke about Lord of the Rings that just worked so slyly because Sean Bean is in this, and yeah, I loved that little geeky kind of tidbit. That was just amazing. It had some actors in it that I really like. So many superhero actors that I like. that I didn't realise was in this movie. As I said, I didn't really have any interest before I put it on to watch it. My boyfriend just wanted to watch it, so I was like, yeah, sure. Overall, I'm glad we decided to put it on a whim because I really enjoyed this, and as I say, I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I watched Requiem for a Dream, which I want to do a separate review for. I'm not sure if it's just going to be its own thing or if I'm going to do like a double or trio review, so keep an eye out for that. After that, I watched the Pendle Witch Child, which was from 2011, and I gave this 3.5 stars. So I've been more and more interested in learning a bit more about these trials since reading The Familiars by Stacey Halls, I think is her name, a few years back, and only knowing a little bit about the Salem witch trials. I just wanted to kind of broaden my intellect, broaden my knowledge on the different kind of trials all over the place. I saw this documentary on Prime about a disturbing bit of British history that I didn't really know much about. So it's about a 9-year-old called Janet Davis, who was the key witness in the trial against her mother, brother, sister and neighbours for practicing witchcraft, allegedly. And it's quite a haunting, disturbing story about that account in history. I quite liked how it took you through the facts of the matter building up to the accusation, what cunning women were, and the family of Janet, as well as Lancashire's general history around that time, also specifically relating to religious views and witchcraft. I like the graphics of the sketchy kind of illustration design layered over the documentary. It just added an extra bit of visual that kind of brought the story to life. I recognised an historian from another TV show that I recently talked about in one of my last wrap-up, Myths and Monsters, if you guys remember that. I think I might have accidentally called it Myths and Legends, but I'm pretty sure it's actually called Myths and Monsters. But yeah, overall this was a very interesting documentary. One that chilled me how sinister these child witness accounts for witchcraft were and how they became so popular in the 17th century. So that's one, if you're interested in witchcraft, to check out if you'd like. Going into February, I watched the Vinci Code, which I gave 3.5 stars. I'm not sure why I always thought this had Nicolas Cage in it and not Tom Hanks. I remember though that this was on when I was on the Eurostar in like year 8, travelling to France with my like school, and the zoom in on the religious art really freaked me out. So I remember forcing myself to sleep on that journey so that I wouldn't have to look at the screen. And that was the only experience I had of this movie until now. I actually quite liked this. It took me a while to get into, and call me gullible, but I was at a loss with if it had any truth in it, and I was still freaked out by the zoom in and trippiness of the artwork. Almost like when I think too hard about space and the sea, I get this really creeped out feeling. But yeah, I know I didn't follow along exactly, but it was interesting, and as you'll see later, I did go on to watch the sequel. After that, I watched Dustbin Baby, which I gave 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I did watch this a good few years ago. I forgot it had Dakota Blue Richards from Golden Compass as April and Juliette Stevenson as Marion, and it also had Saffron Coomber, who I knew from Tracy Beaker, and also Chizzy Akadolo from Holby City. Again, I quite enjoy it when I can pick out actors even if I don't know them by name specifically, just because it's like, oh, it's something to keep out, like especially if I enjoy their performances, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just something to keep an eye out, and I just enjoy doing that. So yeah, quite a few actors that I enjoyed in the past were in this movie. But I actually watched this during my time when I was taking part in the Wilson, which is a reading challenge or a readathon focusing on reading Jacqueline Wilson books, which I took part in a couple of months ago, which was really fun. And so I was just reading Jacqueline Wilson books for like a week and watching some adaptations, and this is an adaptation of her book called Dustbin Baby, about a little girl called April who basically, as a newborn baby, she was found in a dustbin, and it's her story. It kind of takes place in one day on her 14th birthday, I think, where she's just trying to find her mum and go back to all the places, all the foster homes that she'd lived in previously, and kind of try and piece together what she thinks to be her true identity. Yeah, I think the timeline in this is a little bit different in terms of events that unfolded, especially when comparing the movie to the book. Yet nevertheless, it was still an entertaining watch, and I remembered more scenes than I even thought I would when I read the book. and it was all sort of coming back to me as I was watching the movie, so that was a cool experience. Next up, I watched AI, Artificial Intelligence. I gave it 5 stars. I remember watching this quite a few times, quite some years ago, but I only remembered the wood scene, which I recalled completely wrongly, and Gigolo Joe, what do you know? But yeah, this was really heartbreaking. I do love the story. It's basically a science fiction kind of movie set in a world where there's robots for everything, there's artificial intelligence for everything, and the main kind of plot point is this man, or this scientist, has created these really realistic artificial intelligence children, and it also surrounds like the morality behind that, like playing God and all that sort of stuff. And then we're following this particular character who is one of those created children who has come into the life of a mother and father whose son is comatose, and they don't know if he's going to wake up, so they kind of have a replacement child, which, yeah, it's kind of messed up when you explain it like that. And it's just about that, really, how he kind of tries to learn to be human, you know, like rejection. It's just a lot into it, and yeah, I loved the story. The actor of David was amazing. I felt like the end part did keep going on for a bit too long, but wow, it was just such an incredibly moving film. Watching it as an adult, because I think this is the first time I've watched it more like with a mature brain, if you know what I mean, if you can call my brain mature, was an interesting experience because I was able to pick out things that I might not have necessarily picked out as a kid, do you know what I mean, and kind of digest it a bit more and think about it in terms of, you know, morality, what's right, what's wrong, that sort of stuff. I loved the things about the artificial intelligence and human emotion. And yeah, I really should watch and read more of these sort of concepts because it is very fascinating. Next up, I watched this random theatre production called Sharron and Barry Do Romeo and Juliet, and I gave it 1 star, and I feel really bad. I missed the first 20 minutes because I couldn't figure out the sound situation. It was on Zoom, it was through Zoom, and I hadn't properly used Zoom before, so I wasn't really sure how it worked, but yeah, it wasn't that great. It was really bad. Basically, my friend Maria accidentally bought 2 tickets. It was an at-home viewing, so she only needed to buy 1 ticket, and just whoever was in her household could just sit in front of the telly or whatever and watch it. So she didn't want to like waste a ticket, so she gave me the other one. And yeah, it was just, she subjected me to this madness as well. I think she ended up watching the whole of it, but honestly, I turned it off like halfway through because I was like, this is just cringy. I'd already missed the first 20 minutes and it just wasn't getting any better, so yeah, I feel bad though because obviously they've made it, you know, they tried to make it a fun experience for a home viewing, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't pay for a ticket because it wasn't very good. And in March I only really watched 2 movies worth to note. I watched Pet Semetary, which is the 2019 sort of re-release. I believe there was an older version of it years ago or so, and I gave this a 3 stars. So this is one of those movies that I thought I would never watch just because it just sounded disturbing. Originally written by Stephen King. I've never read it, never watched any of the older versions, and yeah, it just, I have some thoughts. So just when I thought that nothing much was happening, everything got super crazy in the last, literally like the last 20 minutes of the movie. It felt very quiet for the most part, but even when like the tragedy hit and weird things started happening, I feel like there wasn't really much going on in terms of plot. The idea was horrifying, and that's probably why I thought it'd be a film that I would never watch, but the execution unfortunately was incredibly lackluster. Nothing happened for the majority of the film. Like, when I realised there was only 20 minutes left, I literally said out loud, but what's happened? Like, it was so disappointing. So yeah, I'm gutted that it didn't spark true terror and fear, because if it would have sparked that, at least I would have got what I expected from the movie, but what I just got was complete and utter disappointment, to be honest. Yeah, and then the last movie to talk about today that I watched in March was Angels and Demons. I mentioned previously in the video that I did follow up from the Da Vinci Code. I think there were 3 movies. I think there might be 4 or 5 books, I might be lying, but I'm pretty sure there's a few more movies than I expected, because I thought it was just these 2, but as we were looking it up, we realised there was another one or so. So yeah, this one I gave 3.5 stars. As I say, it's the sequel to the Da Vinci Code. I think the books are originally by, I want to say Darren Brown, but every time I want to say Darren Brown, I think of The Illusionist, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, as I mentioned, recently watched the Da Vinci Code, so this was another interesting look at like religion and symbols and history, and like conspiracy of it all, with an underlying threat to these things. I really enjoyed it. I watched it in 2 halves though, and I do think that helped me, because it's definitely something that I need to sit down and focus on. There's a lot of information in it, and it can feel a bit dry at times, but you know, especially if you've not been exposed to that sort of historical information before. But yeah, watching it in 2 halves for me worked better. I think it's a series of movies that I can definitely say that I am enjoying, but it is not my general interest, and it is a lot more intricate to what I'm used to in terms of movies, I guess. But yeah, that's it for this video. It's been very talky, but hopefully the actual reviews have been somewhat rapid. I feel like I got through quite a lot. Oh my god, I feel like I got through quite a lot quite quickly, I think. So let me know if you've watched any of these movies and what movies you'd recommend me to watch based off of what you can see I sort of like from these reviews, and I shall speak to you in another video soon. Bye.